introduce yourself as a singer? I sing in Rise Against.
Oh yeah.
Is that typical?
I do it for other singers. You know what I mean?
Okay.
We're all part of a union. Yeah. We're all part of a specific club.
I
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. It's us and quarterbacks and pitchers. Yeah. This is what Greg Graffin from Bad Religion told me once.
Okay.
When we were opening up for him, I was loading gear with the band, and he goes, "Tim, what are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm just loading in, Greg." And he's like, "Tim, we're singers.
We don't have gear.
We don't load gear." And I was like, if I don't load gear, I get 3 really pissed off guys at me. So
This must have been way back when you were actually loading gear.
Yeah. We were opening for Bad Religion. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Admittedly, I haven't loaded gear in a while.
That's the way things work.
Yeah.
That's what you hope for as a band, right? That's the goal.
Like that was the coolest benchmark. The benchmarks were like the day we stopped, all 5 of us sharing a hotel room. You know, I was like,
when was that?
Whoa! I mean,
Last week.
Yeah. I was like, holy shit, we've made it. We can afford 2 rooms, you know? And of course, you hire more guys, and I was still like 4 guys in a room.
Yeah.
But like, I remember thinking that I made it then. And then when someone else was setting up my gear, I remember feeling like I made it then. Because it got to the point where you were walking out on stage, and people were cheering, like, yeah! And then you're like, cool. But 10 more minutes. Just got to tune this thing up, make sure it's all good. You're just going to watch me bend over and lift a lot of things for the next 10, 15 minutes, and then we're going to go on in the most anticlimactic way possible.
How does a Rise Against show start now?
How does it start?
Yeah, do you have like the opening song that you know, especially with the new record and everything?
That's something we're figuring out right now. We just played a few shows, one in Quebec a couple weeks ago, and Summerfest in Milwaukee on Thursday. And yeah, like we opened up with Ready to Fall, but that's something that we're always conscious of. Like we need to open up with a different song we did last year or the year before, and so we go with different strategies. Sometimes it's like, let's open up with a new song no one knows, to kind of like let them hear something. Or sometimes it's like, let's open up with a classic that gets everybody going. Different strategies for festivals and headlining shows. A headlining show, like you're playing for exclusively usually your fans. A festival, you're playing for a lot of other bands' fans.
Yeah, hoping to gain new fans.
Exactly, yeah.
So I had Brian, your friend from Gaslight, on the other day, and because his record doesn't come out till August, and he was saying, I don't want to play any of those songs yet until people know them.
Yeah.
Your record's not out yet.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
It's interesting. Brian texted me too just like a few months ago, like, when's your record coming out? I want to make sure our records don't come out on the same day. And we did the kind of thing where, and I think this is a band, this is a music irony, is that people don't want you to go back on tour until you have a new record out, right? Like they want you to put a new record out and then they want you to go back on tour. Because otherwise you're just kind of still on tour playing the old songs. Once you get on tour, once you arrive at that stage, they just want to hear the old songs. So it's like that weird like sort of battle. But we'll play new songs just because we love to play new songs, but we don't do too many. I think that these last few shows we only did 1 new song out of like an 18-song set.
What song is that?
We did I Don't Want to Be Here. Yeah, we did the single because people will have heard it. But we'll try to sneak as many in as we feel like we can get away with while still keeping people's attention. And we'll try songs and we'll gauge their reaction. Sometimes songs they sound great in the studio or in your headphones, and sometimes you play them live and like they're like bastard children that don't fit into like the family of songs, and then in the crowd you lose the crowd, and then you're like, oh, this was a good song for rocking out in your car, but something about the arc of the show it didn't fit.
That makes me think, I was listening to an interview of you saying you didn't want Savior to be on a record.
I did.
You were just like, ugh.
I know, there was something about it. I don't know what it was, but...
Now you've grown to love it?
I've grown to love it, yeah. And I love all the songs, you know what I mean? And I think in that question I was talking about like just picking singles, and like, I just don't care about singles. I love all the songs. I'm too close to them. I feel not qualified to weigh in, and I don't really care which song is the gateway drug to our record. You know what I mean? Like whatever song someone else thinks is going to do that, cool. That's fine with me. I love all of them.
Cool. Well, speaking of songs that are out there, I just love the word eco-terrorist.
Yeah, so do I.
It's not a thing.
It's not a thing. Thank you for saying that.
So explain to me wanting to use that in a title. Then.
Yeah, I think that was my lack of reverence for that word.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like it was just sort of the eco-terrorist in me. It's like from what, big business, big factory farm corporations, and big companies that are, making a living and making a profit by hurting the environment in a way. Environmentalists and activists have always been a thorn in their side, And so now, instead of trying to clean up their act, they're trying to find ways to make the act of exposing them illegal, So And now in some states in America, if you report on animal abuse that you've witnessed, you can be prosecuted.
I saw that in a documentary.
Yeah, it's called Agricultural Gag Act, or Ag Gag. And in some places it's called the Animal Enterprise Act. In some places, if you blow the whistle on some wrongdoing within a company that specifically deals with cattle, like animals, that kind of thing, then you can be called a terrorist. And it's just like these really backwards laws that are actually passing in some places. And to me, like, I feel like that word means nothing to me. You know what I mean? And so as it's defined as, like, an eco-terrorist is somebody who wants to promote environmentalism. You know what I mean? And kind of like lay down on the tracks for these things that are just stomping over the world. Like, I have far more in common with what you're describing as an eco-terrorist than I do with people that are prosecuting them. And so that's where the song came from, like the eco-terrorist in me.
Cool. It reminds me of. Mark was just saying, veggie dogs. You don't have them. Like, they're more prevalent here than they are down there.
You can get them in the States, but our hot dog stands, like your hot dog stands.
Yeah.
Our hot dog stands do not carry them, for the most part. Yeah. Here, everywhere from like Toronto to all the way to Vancouver, like, you can get a veggie dog on the street.
I'm happy you are talking about that.
I'm so happy about it. I love it. It's seriously like, when I leave here, I'm not gonna walk into some fancy restaurant after this. I'm gonna go get a veggie hot dog, and I'm gonna go sit out at the ACC and watch the World Cup.
There you go.
Yeah.
Who are you cheering for?
I don't know.
Now.
I feel like that's what someone said. Someone said that once your team loses, you got to pick another team that you're rooting for.
Yeah, kind of.
Because I don't really have a horse in this race anymore. I'm just kind of enjoying watching.
It's fun.
Watching the games.
I like the camaraderie it brings of people together standing in front of TVs. Like, you don't see that any other time.
Totally, you're right. And I think I guess I always cheer for the underdog. So.
That doesn't surprise me for some reason.
Yeah.
You said something too. If I can give one thing back to music, it's to have some kid in middle America feel like, oh, this band feels the way I do, so that's okay. Mm-hmm. On the black market, what do you want that kid to take?
Well, that's a good question. I think this record is an extension of that Rise Against narrative of just trying to connect with people and let them know that, like, if they're in a dark place, there's a way out of it. And that's something that Rise Against has always tried to do, and sometimes we've successfully done it, and that's when you get someone in the audience telling you, like, this record helped me through this or helped me through that. That stuff is so much more validating than, like, selling a ticket or a CD or whatever. That stuff is like, it means that you've created something meaningful, and not just disposable. And it's amazing when people get it. You write it and you hope people get it, but you don't ever have that kind of bravado that, like, I will be understood as an artist. You know what I mean? Like, it's the opposite. You kind of assume that it'll get lost in translation, and who's going to really hear it in, like, the myriad of bands and music that's out there, But when people get it, it's amazing.
Is there a song that keeps coming back that maybe surprised you to be like, oh, I didn't think this would touch people as much as it did?
Like, of our songs?
Yeah.
We have a song.
Do people come up to you and be like, I really like that Bob Dylan song?
Right. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe because you covered one, but I didn't.
We did cover one. Yeah, you're right. We wrote a song called "Survive" off of one of our records, and it wasn't a single. It was kind of buried in the record. It was like a pretty punk rock song. Like, it wasn't a poppy kind of number that would just kind of take off. But I put a lot into the lyrics. You know what I mean? And it was all about all the trials and tribulations that you go through in your life. They kind of carve you and make you into the person that you are, and how it's important to embrace that and not let those things kind of destroy you. And I see kids with the lyrics tattooed on them. I see things on the internet, people like using the lyrics to create all kinds of cool art projects. And so it's always amazing, like, cool, like, that song never had, like, a big push behind a label, never had a video, never had that kind of thing, but it found people, and people found it, which is awesome.
Was it a hard song to write, or did it just flow?
Those ones always just flowed, or flew, or flowed. And so and so those ones always just kind of came out, you know what I mean? And I wanted to. The whole process of Rise Against has been, as much as people are discovering the band, like, I'm discovering the band, and I'm discovering, like, what we are, and the music and the lyrics and all that. I feel like every record we kind of learn about this identity that was never a strategy. It was never like a PowerPoint presentation back in '99 and we're like, here's the band we are going to be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. We appreciate using the Microsoft product on that. Thank you.
Okay. I forgot.
Yeah.
And then, this is always a very natural and organic thing. And it's the kind of people that have been attracted to Rise Against that help me understand, like, oh, this is the kind of band we are. This is where we fit in, you know, without having to succumb to expectations, but to kind of have a little more self-awareness about like, this is the niche that we fill in people's lives. These are the kind of people that gravitate towards our music, and that's how always helped me kind of discover who we are. And in that sense, like Rise Against, I'll be honest, was a pretty arbitrary band name when we picked it, and we grew into it. It was like we bought shoes that were too big for us, you know what I mean? And we eventually we grew into it, and we earned the right to call ourselves that.
What did you grow into on this record? Because I've heard you say this, like you're writing about yourselves a lot more on this record.
Yeah, like this one was like, you know, Rise Against has always looked outward, you know, and this one was a lot more looking inward, you know, and it was a lot more of that kind of self-awareness, like kind of like figuring out, what is this crazy endeavor that we've been doing for 15 years? What does it mean? You know, like, what does it still mean after all this? And it was, I think that I was doing a lot of like kind of like just self-reflection on that. I think one reason because we took so much time in between the last two records, so I had time to kind of get a little bit of distance from it, as much distance as someone who's in the band could possibly get. But that offered me a little bit of perspective, and as I was processing that, I did the only thing I know how to do, which is to write about it. You know, writing the record about this endeavor of four guys going onto a stage every night and kind of exchanging these emotions with like different people, you know, and different audience members, and all of that was something that was like just really interesting, and that's where the black market came from.
I wrote down that lyric, yeah.
Yeah, it was like we were like trafficking in all this like emotional, cathartic kind of stuff, and I was just thinking, what a bizarre endeavor for us to be doing all these years later.
Does it, now that you're going out and you're stripping, I saw you with an acoustic guitar earlier, how different are the songs, or playing to an audience when it's stripped down like that, and you don't have everyone backing you up and all the sound and the production and everything?
Yeah, it's way different, a lot more nerve-wracking. It's like, okay, I can't rely on everybody to clean up my mistakes. And it's also, I think, back in the day when someone would say, oh, can you play this song acoustic, I would just kind of freight train through it the same way I do on a stage, and then at some point I realized, well, the song deserves more than that. You know, it's an acoustic guitar, it's being sung in a different kind of setting, and now I've been trying to approach them a little more tactfully, like trying to like bring out the melodies and bring out the lyrics. I feel like that's the sign of a good song, is that when you can do it not just like at full volume with a Marshall stack in front of thousands of people, but you can also do it around a campfire, you know, and then that means like you create something that's like, okay, this is a good song.
Do you write on acoustic, or is most of it on electric?
I write on both. I kind of write all the different ways you could possibly write, but like I do a lot of times I'm tinkering around with an acoustic guitar.
Well, what changed? Let's go, because we're talking about this record.
Okay.
What changed the most? Like if you wrote something on acoustic and then, because nothing sounds, well, I guess there's the second to last song on this record that's stripped down, but other than that.
Yeah, like the second to last one, People Live Here, that was all...
I'm not good with titles, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. I'm still figuring them out too.
Yeah.
My band is really figuring them out, because they all have these working titles that we live with for months, and like, oh man, like even our producer, Bill Stevenson, we've done like all these records with him, and he's never figured out the real titles. You know what I mean? He's like, to him, like the record is what is taking place there in the studio. He doesn't really
big board with the X's.
Exactly. Yeah. He doesn't care about the release, the thing that you can buy over at HMV or whatever. He's like, it's all about like what we did there. And like this many years later, he'll be like, are you gonna play No Effects? And we're like, what's No Effects? Like, well, that's what you were calling Black Masks and Gasoline. You know, and like, oh yeah, that was what we called it. You know, and so it's like, we'll always call these songs by bands that we're referencing. Like, oh, this one kind of sounds like Alkaline Trio. Let's call it that. You know what I mean? Like, and so
I haven't heard Alkaline Trio in a while.
yeah, no, and we take from all these influences.
So what song changed the most?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I lost the question.
Lyrically or sonically or whatever.
Oh, that's a good question.
What took the most to get right?
That's a good question.
That's what I'm here for.
Maybe Zero Visibility was...
It's a different guitar tone.
Yeah, it's like drop D, a different guitar tone, and it was really long. It was like, we just went for it. It was like a Sabbath song, you know, at some point. And it's still long. At some point, we just kind of embraced the length of it. We just decided this isn't going to be a radio edit. You know, we're gonna make this song the way it should be. And so that one changed a little bit from its inception to like the final completion.
Cool. Mm-hmm. I can let you go because I know you got a bunch of other stuff to do.
Okay.
Here. 5 quick questions.
Okay.
1-word answers.
All right.
Road or studio?
Road.
Lennon or McCartney?
Oh, Lennon.
When you hear a song, what usually hits you first? Lyrics, melody, or rhythm?
Melody.
If someone's never heard Rise Against before, what song do they start with?
Survive.
In one word, Rise Against.
Physical.
Nice. Actually, I do want to close with that just for a second.
Okay.
How do you keep your I don't know how you can scream like that for 2 hours every night.
I don't know either.
And not die.
I just keep my fingers crossed that the next day rolls around and I'm still talking and still singing. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.